Millionaire comes home unexpectedly and is shocked by what he finds. The son, once immobile, is now walking, and he had no idea. The one responsible? The ignored employee, who never asked for anything in return. In his own home, the most powerful man was also the blindest. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Now, on with the story. Richard Miller had always believed that life was all about numbers, quarterly reports, annual targets, percentage growth, profit margins. For 23 years, he had built a tech empire from a small office on Fifth Avenue. Today, at 48, he ran one of the country's largest digital solutions companies, with offices spanning 3 continents. His routine was mathematical, predictable, efficient. He woke up at 5 in the morning, ran 6 miles, had coffee alone while reviewing reports, left the house at 7 on the dot, and only returned after 10 at night. Saturdays and Sundays were for strategic meetings or international trips. Holidays were a mere abstraction on the calendar. Marina, his wife, had learned to live in the shadows of this empire. They met in college when he was just a diligent computer engineering student and she was studying architecture. They married young, in love, full of plans, but his plans grew faster than hers. Marina gave up the architecture firm she dreamed of opening to take care of the house, to be available when he needed her, to represent him at social events. Over time, she became just another cog in the well-oiled machine of Richard's life. Educated, elegant, always impeccable, but invisible. Gabriel was born 6 years after their wedding, when Richard was already racking up his first significant business achievements. The pregnancy was complicated, the birth dramatic. The baby came into the world with mild cerebral palsy, primarily affecting the movement in his legs. The doctors were cautious when explaining the diagnosis. Constant physical therapy, multidisciplinary support, motor stimulation, patience, and dedication. Richard listened to it all with the same expression. He wore in business meetings. He made a mental note, hired the best professionals, and ensured nothing was lacking. Then he went back to work. In the early years, Marina threw herself into caring for Gabriel. She took the boy to therapists, neurologists, orthopedists. She attended every session, noted every bit of progress, celebrated every small victory. But it was lonely. Richard was rarely there. When he asked about his son, it was always in an objective, almost bureaucratic way. How are the results? Is the treatment progressing as expected? Any change in the protocol? Gabriel wasn't a project, but he was treated like one. The house they lived in, a modern and spacious townhouse on the Upper East Side, reflected the coldness of their routine. Impeccably decorated spaces, designer furniture, works of art on the walls, a landscaped garden. Everything beautiful, everything expensive, everything empty. Marina moved through the rooms like an elegant ghost, arranging flowers no one saw, preparing dinners no one shared, waiting for conversations that never happened. Gabriel grew up in this deafening silence. At 8, he was already using crutches to get around. He had trouble running, climbing stairs, and joining in more dynamic games. At school, he was always the last one picked for teams, always watching from a distance as his classmates played soccer during recess. He would sit on the bench, drawing in his notebook, creating stories in his mind while the others ran and shouted. The teachers were kind, but there was a pity in their eyes that hurt more than any word. Gabriel noticed. He noticed when they adjusted activities so he could participate. He noticed when his classmates were instructed to include him. He noticed he was different, and that this difference made him someone who needed special consideration. But he had a sweet smile, curious eyes, and a sharp intelligence that surprised everyone. He loved to draw, create stories, and invent worlds where he could be whoever he wanted. In his drawings, he ran, jumped, flew. He was free. In the stories he made up, he was a hero. He had friends who chose him first, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. Those imaginary worlds were his refuge. There, the crutches didn't exist. Marina did her best, but she was exhausted. Exhausted from carrying everything alone. Exhausted from waiting for Richard to wake up to the life that existed beyond his business. Exhausted from pretending everything was okay. There were days she would sit in Gabriel's room while he slept and just watch her son. She wondered what it would be like if Richard were there. If they shared the worries, the joys, the fears, if they shared the small victories she witnessed alone. How many times had Gabriel taken a new step and she had no one to tell? How many times did she have to make difficult decisions about treatments, therapies, medications, without anyone to share the burden? Marina no longer recognized herself in the mirror. The woman who dreamed of designing houses full of life now lived in a soulless one. She had everything money could buy, but lived in the most absolute emotional poverty. Her friends stopped calling. Her family stopped visiting. Everyone knew Richard was never around, and Marina had become just his silent extension. It was in this context that Clara entered their lives. She was 35, from rural Kentucky, from a small town called Three Forks. She came to New York at 18 looking for opportunities. She worked as a nanny, a cook, a housekeeper. She sent money to her mother and siblings every month without fail. She had a wide smile, calloused hands, and a heart that seemed too big for her chest. Marina hired her to help with cleaning and organizing the house. Clara was introduced to her duties objectively, 3 times a week from 8 to noon. Laundry, dishes, bathrooms, bedrooms. Clara accepted everything with humility and started the next day. But something happened in that first week. While passing Gabriel's room, Clara saw the boy trying to reach a book on the highest shelf. He lost his balance, dropped a crutch, and almost fell with it. Clara rushed in, steadied the boy, got the book for him, and naturally asked which story he wanted to read. Gabriel, surprised by the attention, gave a shy smile. From that day on, something changed. Clara began to notice details no one else saw. Gabriel spent a lot of time alone in his room. Marina was always busy but seemed absent even when she was present. Richard was a distant, almost mythical figure. The house felt like a museum. Beautiful, but lifeless. Clara had a younger brother, Louis, who was also born with motor difficulties. She had cared for him throughout his childhood and adolescence. She learned firsthand about strengthening exercises, stretches, and sensory stimulation. She saw her brother progress, gain independence, and overcome limitations. And she also saw how much constant presence, daily encouragement, and genuine affection made a difference. It wasn't long before Clara started interacting more with Gabriel. During her cleaning breaks, she would sit with him, talk, play, and tell stories. She observed the boy's movements, the way he supported himself, the specific difficulties he faced, and, discreetly, she began to suggest small activities. "Let's try to pick up that toy on the floor. What if you help me stretch this sheet? How about we draw sitting here on the rug?" They were simple but intentional gestures. Gabriel, who was rarely challenged physically outside of his formal physical therapy sessions, began to respond. First with hesitation, then with curiosity, and soon with enthusiasm. Clara noticed every improvement. The way he held objects became firmer. His balance gradually improved. His confidence grew. Marina, absorbed in her own anxieties, didn't notice at first. Clara was efficient, discreet, and Gabriel seemed calmer. That was enough. But what Marina didn't know was that Clara was dedicating much more time than she was supposed to. She arrived earlier, stayed later, and on the days she wasn't officially working, she would call to see how Gabriel was doing. The months passed. Clara turned household chores into opportunities for stimulation. When she cleaned the living room, she asked Gabriel to help her arrange the pillows. When she swept the patio, she suggested he join her, even if he just sat and watched. When she prepared a snack in the kitchen, she invited the boy to stand by her side, peeling fruit, stirring ingredients, participating. Clara had infinite patience. When Gabriel got frustrated because he couldn't do something, she didn't push. She waited. She talked. She told stories about her brother, about how he also got angry when his legs wouldn't obey. She said the body needed time, just like a plant needs time to grow. You can't pull on it to make it grow faster. It just hurts it. You have to water it, give it sun, and be patient. Slowly, she created an informal routine. She would arrive a little early before Marina woke up. She'd start with simple stretches, then playful exercises. Gabriel thought they were just playing. He didn't know that every movement was calculated, that every activity had a specific therapeutic purpose. Clara had learned that from her brother. Turn effort into fun. Make the child want to do it, not have to be forced. Sometimes Clara would bring the old guitar she had inherited from her father. She played simple songs, and Gabriel would try to keep the rhythm by clapping his hands or tapping his feet on the floor. She noticed that music helped with his motor coordination, rhythm and body awareness. It was therapy disguised as joy. Gabriel began to change. The quiet, withdrawn boy gave way to a more communicative, active and present child. He laughed more, he tried more, he fell less. And when he fell, he got up by himself. Richard saw none of this. He remained trapped in his relentless routine. Wake up, run, work, sleep, repeat. On weekends, he traveled. When he was home, he locked himself in his office. Gabriel was a peripheral presence, a responsibility well managed from a distance. Marina started to notice the changes, but didn't understand where they were coming from. Gabriel was stronger, more independent, happier. She asked the official physical therapist if the protocol had been changed. The professional, surprised, said it hadn't. So where was this progress coming from? It was on a Thursday morning, 3 months after Clara's arrival, that everything became clear. Marina went downstairs to get a glass of water and heard voices coming from the living room. She approached silently and saw the scene. Gabriel was standing without his crutches, leaning on Clara. She was holding his hands firmly, but without applying force. The boy was taking slow, shaky, but determined steps. Clara was speaking softly, encouraging him. "That's it, Gabriel. Slowly. Feel where your foot is landing. Now the other one. Very good. You're so strong, you know that?" Marina was paralyzed. Tears streamed down her face without her realizing it. How long had it been since she'd seen her son so engaged? How long had it been since she'd seen anyone look at Gabriel with such attention, such patience, such love? Clara turned and saw Marina standing in the doorway. She was startled, quickly let go of Gabriel's hands, and took a step back. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller. I shouldn't have. I just thought—" Marina raised her hand, cutting her off. "How long have you been doing this?" Clara looked down. "A few months." "Are you trained for this?" "No, ma'am, but I took care of my brother for many years. He had difficulties too. I learned by watching, doing, trying. I didn't mean to overstep, but Gabriel is so smart, so hard-working. I thought I could help." Marina felt her chest tighten. This woman, who earned so little, who had so many responsibilities, was dedicating her time, energy, and heart to help her son. Without asking for anything in return, without expecting recognition, simply because she cared. Marina walked over, hugged Clara tightly and whispered, "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." Gabriel, who had sat down on the sofa, watched everything with wide eyes. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew it was something important. In the following days, Marina began to watch the improvised sessions. She saw Clara working with Gabriel, adapting exercises she had learned with her brother, creating games that stimulated his motor development without him realizing he was training. It was brilliant. It was effective. It was done with love. Marina suggested that Clara formalize this work, but the housekeeper hesitated. She said she didn't have a degree, that she wasn't sure it was right, that she was afraid of making a mistake. Marina insisted. She said she would look into it, find courses, and do whatever was necessary for Clara to continue helping Gabriel officially. But the one who still knew nothing was Richard. He remained immersed in the corporate world. He closed a strategic merger, opened a new office in London, and launched an innovative product. The numbers grew, the praise multiplied, and the invitations for speeches and interviews never stopped. Richard Miller was a success story, an example of determination, a model of efficiency. Until on a rainy Tuesday in March, everything changed. Richard had an important meeting scheduled for 4 in the afternoon. At 2, he received a message saying the meeting had been cancelled. He decided for the first time in months to go home early. He arrived around 3:30. The rain was pouring outside. The house was quiet. He walked in, hung up his suit jacket and loosened his tie. He heard muffled voices coming from the living room. He approached. He stopped at the entrance and he saw. Gabriel was standing, holding a cleaning cloth, wiping down the sofa. His crutches were leaning against the wall far from him. Clara was beside him, helping but letting the boy do it himself. Gabriel moved slowly, with effort, but with autonomy. He was laughing as he worked. Clara was laughing too. Richard stood motionless. This was not the son he knew. This was not the fragile, dependent, limited boy. This was someone different, someone he had never seen before. Clara noticed Richard's presence and stiffened. Gabriel turned, saw his father, and broke into a huge smile. "Dad! You're home early." Richard couldn't answer. He felt something strange in his chest, a mix of surprise, confusion, and something he couldn't name. Guilt, maybe. Shame. Or the sudden awareness that he had lost something precious without even realizing it. Clara bowed slightly, took the cloth from Gabriel's hands, and said she was going to finish cleaning in the kitchen. She left quickly, leaving father and son alone. Gabriel kept smiling. "I'm helping Clara. She said I'm really good at it." Richard approached, knelt in front of his son, and for the first time in years, truly looked at him. He saw the bright eyes, the face flushed from effort, the small but firm hands. He saw a happy boy, and he realized he knew almost nothing about him. "How are you doing that, Gabriel?" "Clara teaches me. We practice every day. I can stand by myself for a long time now. Look." Gabriel let go of the sofa and stood, balancing. He was trembling a little, but he was standing, alone. Richard felt his eyes burn. He swallowed hard. "You're amazing, son." Gabriel's smile grew even wider. "You've never seen me practice, have you, Dad? Mum sees me. And Clara is always with me, but you're always working." The sentence was innocent, but it hit Richard like a punch to the gut. That night, after Gabriel was asleep, Richard looked for Marina. She was on the balcony, drinking tea, watching the rain that had now passed. He sat next to her in silence. Marina didn't turn her head. "How long has this been going on?" Richard asked, his voice low. 3 months, maybe 4. I'm not sure when it started." "Why didn't you tell me?" Marina finally looked at him. There was exhaustion in her eyes. Exhaustion and a deep sadness. "Because you're not here, Richard. You're never here. When was the last time you sat with Gabriel? When was the last time you asked about his day? When was the last time you were truly present?" Richard lowered his head. "I work to make sure you have everything. We don't need everything. We need you." The silence that followed was heavy. Marina stood up, left her cup on the coffee table, and went to her room. Richard was left alone on the balcony, looking at the illuminated city below. For the first time in many years, he felt afraid. Afraid of having lost something he could never get back. He thought, of all the trips he had taken, how many birthdays had he missed? How many school plays? How many nights had Gabriel called for him and he wasn't there? How many times had Marina needed him and found only absence? He remembered the day Gabriel was born. He held the baby in his arms, so small, so fragile. He promised he would give him everything, education, comfort, opportunities. But he forgot the most important thing. He forgot to give his presence. He forgot to give his time. He forgot to give love, not just in the form of things, but in the form of being there. And now a woman who earned a fraction of what he paid in taxes had done for his son what he never could. She had seen potential where he only saw limitation. She had dedicated hours where he only dedicated money. She had loved where he had only managed. The guilt was a physical weight in his chest. It hurt. It burned. Richard ran a hand over his face, tired. He didn't know where to start. He didn't know if there was still time. He didn't know if Marina would forgive him. He didn't know if Gabriel still needed him. But he knew one thing. Something had to change. And it had to change now. The following days were strange for Richard. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't entirely focused on business. During meetings, he found himself thinking about Gabriel. In financial reports, he saw his son's smiling face. During strategic presentations, he heard Marina's voice saying they didn't need everything. They needed him. He tried to resume his normal routine. He woke up at 5, ran his usual 6 miles, had coffee while checking emails. But when it was time to leave, he hesitated. He went up to Gabriel's room. He opened the door slowly. The boy was still asleep, covered up to his neck, his messy hair spread across the pillow. Richard stood there, just watching. How many times had he entered that room? How many times had he really stopped to look? Gabriel seemed so small, so vulnerable. How had he let so much time pass? Marina appeared in the hallway, surprised to see her husband there. "You're going to be late," she said, her voice neutral. Richard nodded but didn't move. Marina came closer, stood beside him, looking at their son. "He sleeps peacefully now," Marina said softly. "He used to have nightmares. He'd wake up crying. But since Clara started working with him, it's gotten much better. I think he feels more capable, more secure." Richard swallowed hard. "I never knew about the nightmares." "I know." The silence that followed was heavy with everything that hadn't been said for years. Richard left without another word. In the car, on the way to the office, he felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't explain. That afternoon, during a video conference with European investors, Richard turned off his camera for a moment and just took a deep breath. His assistant, Jennifer, knocked on the door and came in with a stack of documents. "Mr. Miller, I need you to sign these contracts before 6, and I've confirmed your trip to Dubai for next week. You leave Sunday morning and return on Friday." Richard took the papers but didn't open them. Dubai. Another trip. Another week away. 7 more days without seeing Gabriel, without talking to Marina, without being present. "Cancel the trip," he said without looking at Jennifer. The assistant blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" "Cancel it. Reschedule it for a month from now. And from now on, no trips without my prior authorization. And I want you to block off my Friday afternoons. Don't schedule anything." Jennifer was visibly shocked. In 10 years of working for Richard, she had never seen him refuse a trip or ask to block off time. "Mr. Miller, are you sure? This meeting in Dubai is extremely important. The sheikhs—" "I know how important it is. But there are more important things. Reschedule it." Jennifer left, still not understanding. Richard didn't fully understand either. He just knew that something had broken inside him. The perfect machine that drove his life had jammed, and for the first time he didn't want to fix it. He wanted to build something different. That Friday, Richard left the office at 4 in the afternoon. He got home before 5. Marina was in the kitchen talking with Clara. Seeing him, they were both surprised. "Did something happen?" Marina asked, concerned. "No, I just wanted to come home early." Clara looked down, uncomfortable. She still didn't know how to act around Richard. Ever since he had witnessed the session with Gabriel, she felt she had crossed some invisible line. "Clara, where's Gabriel?" Richard asked. "In his room, sir, doing his homework." Richard went upstairs. He knocked on his son's door. Gabriel looked up from his notebook, surprised. "Dad? You're home early again?" "I am. Can I come in?" Gabriel nodded, still wary. Richard sat on the bed next to the desk where his son was studying. They sat in silence for a moment. "What are you working on?" Richard asked. "English homework. I have to write about an important person in my life." Richard felt his heart clench. "And who are you writing about?" Gabriel hesitated. "About Clara." The words hit Richard like a direct arrow. His son asked about an important person, chose the housekeeper. Not his father, not his mother. The woman who, in a few short months, had done more for him than Richard had in 8 years. "That's a great choice," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "She's a special person." Gabriel nodded, excited. "She teaches me so much, Dad, and not just about walking or standing. She teaches me that I can do things, that I don't have to be afraid, that I'm capable." Richard reached out, gently touching his son's face. "You were always capable, Gabriel. I was just too blind to see it." The following days brought subtle but constant changes. Richard started leaving work earlier. Not every day, but 3 or 4 times a week. He would come home, change out of his suit into comfortable clothes, and go to wherever Gabriel and Clara were training. At first, he just watched. He would sit on the sofa, in silence, and watch his son work hard. He saw Clara instructing with patience, correcting with care, encouraging without pushing. Every small step forward was celebrated. Every fall was turned into a learning experience. One afternoon, while Gabriel was trying to balance on one leg, holding onto a chair, Clara noticed Richard watching. "Would you like to join in?" she asked timidly. Richard hesitated, but Gabriel answered for him. "Dad, come on. I'll show you what I can do." Richard got up and walked over. Clara gave instructions. "Just stand here next to him, Mr. Miller, just for support. You don't need to hold him. Just let him know you're close." Richard positioned himself next to his son. Gabriel tried the exercise. He trembled. He lost his balance. Richard instinctively reached out, but Clara signaled for him to wait. Gabriel adjusted on his own. He took a deep breath. He tried again. He managed to hold it for 5 seconds. "I did it!" Gabriel shouted, excited. "You sure did, son. You were amazing." Gabriel hugged his father tightly. Richard felt his eyes burn. When was the last time he had hugged his son like that? When was the last time he was present to celebrate one of his victories? Slowly, Richard began to participate more actively. Clara taught, and he learned. How to hold Gabriel to help him stretch. How to position him to strengthen certain muscles. How to encourage him without pressure. It was a science, but also an art. And Clara had mastered both. Marina watched everything from a distance. At first, with suspicion. Was this temporary? Was it just a passing guilt trip? But the weeks went by and Richard remained present. He kept participating. He kept trying. One night, after Gabriel was asleep, Marina found Richard in the living room, studying pediatric physical therapy exercises on his laptop. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Trying to learn. Clara makes it look so natural, but there's a lot of technique involved. I want to help more effectively." Marina sat next to him. They were silent for a few minutes. "Why now, Richard?" she finally asked. "Why did you only wake up now?" Richard closed the laptop and turned to her. "Because I saw what I was losing. Because I realized I was building an empire and losing a family. Because I found out my son wrote an essay about our housekeeper and not about me. Because you were right. You don't need everything. You need me. And I wasn't here." Marina felt her eyes well up with tears. "I spent so long waiting for this, waiting for you to see us, to participate, to care. I was about to give up, Richard. I know, and I'm so sorry. I don't know if I can fix everything, but I want to try. I want to be here. I want to get to know our son. I want to have a real family again." Marina didn't answer right away. She just rested her head on his shoulder. It was a start. The changes continued. Richard reorganized his schedule. He delegated more responsibilities. He started turning down commitments that would take him away from home on weekends. His team was confused. His partners were worried. But Richard was firm. At the office, the hallway chatter increased. Was something wrong with the boss? Was he having health problems? They even considered a midlife crisis. Richard heard the whispers, saw the concerned looks, but he didn't care. For the first time in decades, he had clarity about what truly mattered. His days changed completely. Before, he would wake up thinking about targets, strategies, competitors. Now he woke up thinking about Gabriel, about his progress, about what new activity they could try that day, about how to make Marina genuinely smile, not just the polite smile she wore as a social mask. Jennifer, his assistant, had to adapt to the new reality. She learned that nothing could be scheduled after 6 p.m., that Fridays were sacred, that trips required at least 2 weeks' notice, and most importantly, that Richard's family was now the absolute priority. In a board meeting, one of the oldest partners, Edward Thompson, a 60-year-old man who had known Richard since the company's beginning, confronted him. "Richard, what's going on? You're different, less focused. You're letting opportunities slip by." Richard took a deep breath. He knew this conversation would come eventually. "I've spent 20 years at this company. I dedicated every minute of my life to making it grow, and it grew. But while it was growing, I was losing my son, my marriage, my life. Now I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying not to lose what really matters." "But the company..." The company will continue to grow, just with limits now. I have a family, and they need me more than this company does." Edward was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You know, Richard, I lost my first marriage because I did exactly what you're stopping. I worked too much, was absent too much. By the time I woke up, my wife was gone, and my kids didn't really know me. It took years to rebuild anything. If I could go back—" "Richard, you're doing the right thing." Edward's words brought an unexpected relief to Richard. Maybe he wasn't crazy. Maybe he was just finally making sense. At home, the changes were more visible. On Saturdays, Richard started taking Gabriel to the park. Clara would accompany them, guiding exercises that looked like games. Gabriel ran slowly, but he ran. He climbed the slide with help, but he climbed. He played with the ball even if he didn't score. And Richard was there, running with him, climbing with him, playing with him. The first Saturday at the park was a revelation. Richard didn't know how to play, literally. He stood there, awkward, unsure of what to do. Clara noticed and gently taught him. She showed him how to hold the ball so Gabriel could catch it, how to push the swing without scaring the boy, how to turn every activity into an exercise disguised as fun. Gabriel, at first, was hesitant. He wasn't used to having his father around. He didn't know if he could trust this new presence. But slowly, he opened up. He laughed when Richard tried to be silly. He asked his dad to push him higher on the swing. He called him over to see every little achievement. "Dad, look, I kicked the ball all by myself." Richard applauded, genuinely impressed and moved. Every small milestone was a celebration, and he was there to witness it. Marina joined them sometimes. She saw her husband sweaty, tired, but happy. She saw her son, radiant. She saw Clara coordinating everything masterfully. It was a scene that months ago she would have never imagined possible. On one of these Saturdays, a mother approached them. She had a daughter about Gabriel's age. The girl was watching Gabriel play with curiosity. "Hi," the woman said, smiling. "My daughter is fascinated by your son. He's so brave. Can I ask, does he have any special support?" Marina was about to answer, but Richard spoke up first, pride in his voice. "Yes, this is Clara, Gabriel's therapeutic companion. She's helping him develop his motor skills. The progress has been incredible." The woman looked at Clara with respect. "What wonderful work you do. My daughter has Down syndrome, and we've been looking for someone like you. Could I get your contact information?" Clara was speechless. She had never imagined her work could be recognized like this. They exchanged numbers, and the woman thanked them profusely before leaving. Marina hugged Clara, emotional. "You're changing lives, Clara, not just Gabriel's. So many other children who will get to know you." Clara wiped away the tears that insisted on falling. It was gratitude, it was fulfillment, it was the feeling that, finally, her life had a greater purpose. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The progress attracted attention. At school, the teachers started asking questions. A meeting was scheduled. The academic coordinator, Mrs. Peterson, a rigid and conservative woman, called Marina and Richard in for a talk. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, we need to talk about Gabriel." "Is something wrong?" Marina asked, worried. "Not exactly, but we've noticed he's constantly accompanied by someone who isn't family. Your employee has been picking him up, staying during recess and accompanying him on field trips. It's causing some discomfort." "Discomfort?" Richard repeated, his voice firm. "Yes, the other children are asking questions. The parents are questioning it. Some find it inappropriate, others feel she's taking up a space that should belong to you." Marina felt anger rising. "Clara is there because Gabriel needs her. She's his therapeutic companion. She's been working with him for months and the results are undeniable." "We understand," Mrs. Peterson said with a forced smile. "But perhaps it would be better to hire someone with formal training, someone with a degree, someone who isn't, well, a housekeeper." Richard stood up, his expression hard. "Clara has done for my son what no professional with a degree could. She sees him as a person, not a patient. She is transforming his life, and if that causes discomfort for some parents, that's their problem, not ours. Mrs. Peterson was speechless. Marina stood up too. We appreciate your concern, but Clara will continue to accompany Gabriel, and if that's a problem for the school, perhaps we need to find another institution. They left the meeting indignant. In the car, Marina vented. Did you see that? The way she talked about Clara? As if she were less, as if she wasn't good enough. Richard gripped the steering wheel tightly. I know, and that's exactly the kind of prejudice I fed into for years. I saw Clara as just another employee. I didn't see the extraordinary person she is, but I see it now, and I won't let anyone disrespect her. When they got home, they told Clara about the meeting. She was quiet, her eyes downcast. I understand if you'd prefer I stop. I don't want to cause problems. Marina took her hands. You're not going to stop. You're not causing any problems. The problem is people who can't see beyond appearances. Clara wiped away a tear that insisted on falling. I just want to help Gabriel. I care about him so much. And he cares about you, Richard said. More than you know. That night, Richard made a decision. He contacted lawyers specializing in labor law. He wanted to formalize Clara's situation. She would no longer be a domestic employee. She would be an official therapeutic companion with a proper contract, an appropriate salary, benefits, and job security. He researched professional courses. He found a program in occupational therapy and another in therapeutic accompaniment offered by renowned institutions. He spoke with coordinators, explained the situation, and asked about scholarships or partnerships. He was determined to give Clara all the tools she needed to officially practice what she already did with mastery. When he presented the proposal to Clara a few days later, she couldn't hold back her tears. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Richard and Marina came in together. They asked her to sit down. Clara, Richard began, Marina and I have talked a lot these past few days. About you, about Gabriel, about everything that's been happening here. Clara wrung her hands, nervous. She thought she was going to be fired. We want to formalize your role here. You will no longer be a domestic employee. You will be Gabriel's official therapeutic companion, with a registered contract, a salary commensurate with the position, health insurance, food vouchers, everything you're entitled to. Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. But I don't have a degree. I don't... Marina interrupted, taking her hands. That's why we're also going to pay for your education. We found some excellent courses. You're going to study. You're going to become even more professional. And in the meantime, you'll continue doing the wonderful work you already do with Gabriel. Clara covered her face with her hands and cried. She cried with joy, with gratitude, with relief. She had never imagined this would be possible. A simple woman from a small town without a college degree would now have a recognized profession, a decent salary, a more secure future. I thought of so many things when I came to New York, Clara said through her tears. I thought about working hard, sending money to my mom, helping my siblings, but I never thought I could have a profession like this, that I could study, that I could be recognized for doing what I love. Richard felt a lump in his throat. You deserve this and so much more, Clara. You saved my son from a limited life. You saved me from an empty life. You saved us as a family. That's priceless. Marina hugged Clara tightly, crying too. You're not an employee, Clara. You're part of this family, and you always will be. Gabriel, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway without the adults noticing, ran in and hugged Clara's legs. You're not leaving, are you, Clara? Clara picked the boy up, kissed his forehead. No, my angel, I'm never leaving. I promise. Richard hugged all three of them. Marina joined in. There, in that simple kitchen in a group hug, the Miller family finally became a real family, not just by blood ties, but by bonds of love, respect, and gratitude. The following months brought a routine the Miller family had never experienced. Dinners at the table all together, conversations about each other's day, genuine laughter, shared plans. The house on the Upper East Side, once cold and silent, now had life. Gabriel progressed impressively. With the constant support of Clara, now officially recognized and in the process of professional Training, the boy achieved an autonomy that doctors had considered unlikely. He walked with much more confidence. He went up and down stairs by himself. He participated in physical activities at school. His self-esteem blossomed. Marina started to smile for real again. She picked up old hobbies. She started drawing architectural designs again, now more as therapy than a profession. She enrolled in a pottery class. She reconnected with friends she had lost touch with. The faded woman gave way to someone vibrant, present and happy. Richard, for his part, discovered what it meant to be a father. Not just a provider, but a presence. He learned to make paper airplanes. He helped Gabriel with his homework. He read stories before bed. He attended parent-teacher conferences. He knew the teachers, his son's friends, and their parents. He was finally living. But life has a peculiar way of testing transformations. It all started subtly. At school, some of Gabriel's classmates began to ask questions. Why was that woman always with him? She wasn't his mum. She wasn't a teacher. Who was she? Gabriel, proud, would explain. Clara was his therapeutic companion. She helped him get stronger. But the children, influenced by conversations they overheard at home, started to use it against him. One day during recess, a boy named Philip, the son of a well-known businessman in the city, provoked Gabriel in front of other classmates. "Your dad is so rich, he hired a maid to take care of you because not even he or your mum want to be around you." Gabriel felt his face burn, not because of the taunt itself, but because of the injustice. Clara wasn't there because his parents didn't want to be. She was there because she cared. "She's not a maid, she's my therapist, and she's with me because she wants to be, not because she has to be." Philip laughed cruelly. "Therapist? She doesn't even have a degree. My mom said she's just a cleaning lady you call a therapist, so you're not embarrassed." The other children laughed. Gabriel felt his eyes sting, but he didn't cry. Instead, he stood up, leaning firmly on his own 2 legs, and faced Philip. "Clara is worth more than 1,000 people like you. She taught me how to walk. She taught me to be strong. She taught me that what matters isn't what you have, but who you are." The teacher on duty intervened before the situation could escalate, but the damage was done. Gabriel came home that day quieter than usual. Marina noticed. "Did something happen, honey?" Gabriel hesitated, but eventually told her. Marina felt a deep anger well up inside her. She called Richard, who was working in his home office. The 3 of them gathered in the living room. Richard listened in silence. When Gabriel finished, he knelt in front of his son. "You know what that boy said isn't true, right?" Gabriel nodded. "I know, Dad, but why are people like that? Why can't they see that Clara is special?" Richard took a deep breath. "Because a lot of people measure a person's worth by what they have, not by who they are. But you, Gabriel, you've already learned the most important lesson in life. You see people for who they really are, and that makes you better than any of those boys." That night, Richard and Marina talked for a long time. They knew that incident was just the beginning. Prejudice was insidious, especially when disguised as concern or common sense. The next day, Clara arrived for her morning session with Gabriel and noticed something was different. The boy was withdrawn. It took a while for him to tell her what had happened. Clara listened in silence, her heart aching. It wasn't the first time she had faced this kind of situation. When she cared for her brother, she also heard malicious comments, looks of contempt, whispers. But this time it hurt differently, because it wasn't about her, it was about Gabriel, and she never wanted to be a source of pain for that boy. "Gabriel," she said, holding his hands, "I can talk to your parents. If you want, I can stop going to school with you. I don't want you to go through this because of me." Gabriel looked into her eyes, surprised. "No, you're not going to stop. I don't care what they say. You're important to me." Clara hugged the boy, moved. But the situation worsened. The following week, during a birthday party for a classmate, several mothers were present. Clara took Gabriel, as planned. When they arrived, one of the mothers, Patricia, the wife of an influential judge, approached them. "You're Gabriel's companion, aren't you?" she asked, her tone clearly condescending. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Clara. I see. You know, I have a cousin who works in occupational therapy. She has a master's from Columbia. If the Millers are interested, I can pass along her contact info. It would be more appropriate, don't you think? Clara swallowed her discomfort. I appreciate the offer, but the Miller family and I are very happy with the work we're doing together. Patricia smiled, but it was a cold smile. Of course, I just thought, well, you understand. He's a child from a prominent family. He deserves the best, don't you think? Clara felt her blood boil, but she maintained her composure. She had learned over the years to swallow insults, to lower her head, to accept the place society insisted on putting her in. But this time was different. It wasn't about her. It was about Gabriel. And Gabriel deserved for her to be strong. Before she could respond, Gabriel stepped forward, his voice firm. She is the best. And if you can't see that, that's your problem, not hers. The mothers around them fell silent, shocked by the boy's response. Patricia turned red with anger and embarrassment. She tried to laugh it off as if it were a joke, but her discomfort was palpable. One of the other mothers, trying to ease the tension, quickly changed the subject. The party continued, but the atmosphere was tense. Gabriel noticed that Clara was shaken. He held her hand tightly. You don't care what she said, right? Clara forced a smile. No, my angel, I'm fine. But she wasn't. That night, alone in her room in the small apartment she shared with her sister on the outskirts of the city, Clara cried. She cried from exhaustion, from frustration, from anger. She did everything right, dedicated herself completely, loved that boy as if he were her own. And still she was seen as less, as inadequate, as a problem. Later that evening, Richard received a call from Patricia. She complained about Gabriel's behavior, said he had been rude, that he lacked manners. Richard listened in silence, his anger growing with every word. Patricia, he finally interrupted, my son defended someone he loves from a prejudiced and disrespectful comment. If that's a lack of manners to you, then I'm glad my son doesn't have those manners. He hung up before she could respond. Marina, who had heard everything, hugged her husband. I'm proud of you. And of Gabriel. But the problems didn't stop. At school, other parents began to question Clara's presence. Some said it was inappropriate. Others claimed it distracted the other children. The principal, under pressure, scheduled another meeting. This time, Richard went alone. He walked into the principal's office with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was going to say. Mr. Miller, the principal began, we've been receiving some complaints from parents about the constant presence of your son's companion on school grounds. What kind of complaints? Well, some parents feel it could cause discomfort. Others question her qualifications, and some say Gabriel should be more independent. Richard leaned forward. Principal, Gabriel is more independent now than he has ever been, and that's thanks to Clara. She isn't here because my son is incapable. She's here because my son deserves all the support possible to continue progressing. And if some parents can't see that, it's their problem, not ours. I understand, Mr. Miller, but we have to think about the well-being of all the children. And my son's well-being? Does it matter less because it offends the elitist sensibilities of a few parents? The principal was at a loss for words. Richard continued. Clara will continue to accompany Gabriel. If the school cannot guarantee a respectful environment for both of them, we will have to find another institution that can. He left the meeting determined. In the car, he called Marina and told her everything. Together, they began looking for other schools with a more inclusive, more humane vision. Meanwhile, at home, another problem began to surface. Clara started getting strange looks from the other household staff. The cook, Leah, and the gardener, Mario, both of whom had worked there for years, began to show resentment. One morning, Marina overheard Leah commenting to Mario in the service area, She got here after everyone else, does less work than us, and now she's making more. The boss is even paying for her classes. We've been here for years and never got anything like that. Marina felt the discomfort but didn't know how to address it. Clara, for her part, began to feel the weight of this isolation. She was no longer seen as an equal by the other staff, but she wasn't part of the family either. She was in an uncomfortable limbo. The situation came to a head at a dinner party Richard and Marina hosted for some old friends. It was a formal evening with many guests. Clara was in the kitchen helping to organize things when one of the guests, Renata, the wife of one of Richard's partners, came in looking for the restroom. "Oh, you must be the maid. Could you bring some more white wine to the main table?" she said, without even really looking at Clara. Clara was about to respond politely when Gabriel appeared at the kitchen door. "She's not the maid, she's my therapeutic companion." Renata looked at the boy, surprised and a little embarrassed. "Oh yes, of course, sorry dear. Anyway, could you bring the wine?" Clara nodded and went to get it, but Gabriel stood there, looking at Renata with clear disapproval. The woman, growing more uncomfortable under the boy's intense gaze, quickly left the kitchen. Marina, who had witnessed the scene from the hallway, came into the kitchen. She hugged Clara. "I'm so sorry. People can be so—" Clara forced a smile. "It's okay, Mrs. Miller. I'm used to it." "But you shouldn't be. You don't deserve this." Later, during dinner at the large, mahogany table in the dining room, everyone was chatting animatedly. Richard made sure Gabriel was included, sitting at the table for the first time at a formal dinner. The boy looked elegant, was well-behaved, and observed everything with his intelligent eyes. The conversation flowed between business, travel, and politics, until Maurice, a famous lawyer and a friend of Richard's since college, decided to make a comment he thought was funny. "Richard, congratulations. Gabriel looks incredible. Seriously, his progress is impressive. But tell me something, and this is just out of curiosity, when are you going to hire someone with proper qualifications? Because, let's be honest, a housekeeper playing therapist is at the very least curious, isn't it? Not that she's bad, but you have the resources to hire the best, don't you?" The silence was instant and deafening. Marina dropped her fork, the sound of metal against porcelain echoing in the quiet room. Richard sat motionless, his jaw tight. Some guests stared at their plates, others exchanged uncomfortable glances. Gabriel, however, didn't hesitate. He stood up from his chair, steadying himself on the table, and faced Maurice. "Clara has more heart, more talent, and more love for me than any person with a degree my parents could ever hire. She made me believe I can do things. She woke up with me when I had nightmares. She caught me when I fell. She celebrated every little victory like it was the biggest achievement in the world. She made me happy. And if you can't see that, then you don't understand anything about what really matters in life." The 8-year-old boy's voice echoed through the room with impressive maturity. Maurice turned pale, his wine glass trembling slightly in his hand. The other guests were petrified, some visibly moved by the child's words. Richard rose slowly, walked over to Gabriel, and placed a hand on his son's shoulder with evident pride. "My son has said everything that needed to be said. And I'll just add one thing. Clara is not a housekeeper playing therapist. She is a dedicated professional currently in training, who has transformed the life of my son and this entire family. She has taught us about values that no university teaches. And to disrespect her is to disrespect me, my wife, and my son. If anyone here can't accept that, if anyone here thinks a diploma is more important than dedication, that a title is more valuable than love, the door is open." Maurice placed his napkin on the table and stood up, his face red with embarrassment. "Richard, I didn't mean to offend. Really, I was just making an observation. You did offend. Deeply. Now please, leave my house." Maurice's wife, visibly mortified, stood up as well. She tried to stammer an apology, but Richard remained firm. The couple left, the silence in the room still heavy. Other guests, feeling uncomfortable, began to say their goodbyes as well, some with flimsy excuses, others in silence. When everyone had gone, Richard, Marina, and Gabriel were left in the room, the large table still set, food half-eaten, candles lit. What should have been an elegant evening had turned into a defining moment. Clara appeared at the dining room door. She had heard everything from the kitchen. Tears were streaming freely down her face. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "I never wanted to cause all this. I never wanted to be a source of trouble." Richard walked over to her, took her hands. "You are not the problem, Clara. The problem is people who can't see. beyond appearances, and I will not allow anyone to disrespect you. Marina hugged Clara. You are part of this family, and families protect each other. Gabriel ran and hugged her legs. I love you, Clara. Clara appeared at the dining room door. She had heard everything from the kitchen. Tears streamed down her face. I never wanted to cause all this. I never wanted to be a source of trouble. Richard walked quickly to her, took her hands. You are not the problem, Clara. The problem is people who can't see beyond appearances. And I will not allow anyone to disrespect you. Marina hugged Clara. You are part of this family, and families protect each other. Gabriel ran and hugged her legs. I love you, Clara, more than anything. Clara knelt and hugged the boy tightly. She cried tears of gratitude, of love, of belonging. That night, after Gabriel was asleep, Clara received a call. It was Joanna, her sister in Three Forks. Her voice was desperate. Clara, it's Mom. She collapsed today. She needs emergency heart surgery. It's serious. Clara's world stopped. Her mother, Mrs. Davis, the strong woman who raised 5 children on her own, the woman who always believed in her. How much is the surgery? Clara asked, her voice trembling. Joanna hesitated. $85,000. It has to be private. Clara, we don't have that kind of money. Clara hung up and broke down. She sat on her bedroom floor and cried. $85,000. Even with her new salary, it would take her years to save that much, and her mother didn't have that kind of time. The next morning, Clara arrived for work with red, swollen eyes. Marina noticed immediately. Clara, what happened? Clara told her about her mother, the surgery, the desperation. Marina called Richard. The 3 of them sat in the living room. Richard listened in silence. When Clara finished, he took out his phone and started a wire transfer. Mr. Miller, what are you doing? I'm transferring the money for the surgery and a little extra for treatment, recovery, and medication. Clara was paralyzed. But that's almost $100,000. How will I ever pay you back? Richard looked at her intently. You're not going to pay it back. It's a gift. Your mother is going to have the best surgery in the best hospital, and you're going to have peace of mind to continue your work here. But no buts, Marina interrupted. You have given everything to this family. The least we can do is make sure your mother has a chance to live. Clara collapsed into tears of relief, of gratitude, of understanding that she was for the first time truly supported. Richard showed her the confirmation. Done. Call your sister. Schedule the surgery. And if you need to go to Three Forks, go. Gabriel will be fine. Clara hugged Richard and Marina, sobbing. Gabriel, who had woken up, came into the room. Why is everyone crying? Marina smiled through her tears. They're good tears, my love, happy tears. Gabriel joined the hug. There, 4 people from different walks of life formed something greater than a traditional family. They formed a chosen family, built on love, respect, and gratitude. Clara traveled to Three Forks that same day. Richard insisted on buying her a plane ticket, but she preferred to take the bus. She wanted time to think, to process everything that was happening. During the 8-hour journey, she watched the landscape change out the window, the big city giving way to the countryside, and reflected on how her life had been transformed. Mrs. Davis's surgery was a success. The doctors, surprised by the swift payment and the quality of the chosen hospital, gave the case special attention. The recovery would be long, but the prognosis was excellent. Clara stayed in Three Forks for 2 weeks, caring for her mother, catching up with her siblings, and revisiting childhood places. In New York, life went on, but with a noticeable void. Gabriel missed Clara every day. Marina and Richard kept up with his exercises, religiously following the instructions Clara had left. But it wasn't the same. Her touch was missing. Her infinite patience, the special way she turned everything into a game. Richard, for the first time in his life, understood what it was like to wait for someone. Not an employee, not a service provider, but someone who was missed. He now realized how essential Clara had become, not just for Gabriel, but for the entire family. When Clara finally returned, she was welcomed like a queen. Gabriel hugged her so tightly, he almost knocked her over. Marina cried with joy. Richard, more reserved, simply smiled and said the house wasn't the same without her. The following months brought significant changes. Richard made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He gathered his partners and announced he was stepping down as CEO of the company. He would remain a shareholder, participate in strategic decisions, but he would no longer be the chief executive. He wanted time, he wanted a life, he wanted to be present. The news spread quickly through the market. Some questioned it, others speculated about health problems or business crises. But Richard didn't care. For the first time, the opinions of others didn't affect him. With more free time, he dove headfirst into the world of pediatric therapy. He began to seriously study motor development, neuroplasticity, and stimulation techniques. He would talk for hours with Clara, learning from her, absorbing not just the technical knowledge, but her philosophy of work. She saw each child as unique, each bit of progress as a victory, each challenge as an opportunity. It was during one of these conversations that the idea was born. Richard was in the backyard, helping Gabriel with balance exercises, when he turned to Clara. "Have you ever thought about how many children could benefit from the work you do?" Clara smiled sadly. "I think about it every day, but it's difficult. Most families can't afford a companion, and certified professionals are too expensive. What if we created something different? A place where children with motor difficulties could receive quality care, regardless of their family's financial situation." Clara looked at Richard, not fully understanding. "What do you mean?" "A therapy center, but not an ordinary one. A place that brings together certified professionals with people like you, who have the gift, the practical experience, the love for what they do. A place where the focus is on the child, not the profit." Marina, who had overheard the conversation from the balcony, came down excited. "That's an incredible idea, Richard. We could partner with universities, bring in interns, create scholarship programs." The following weeks were filled with intense planning. Richard used all his business experience to structure the project. Marina, rediscovering her passion for architecture, designed a playful, welcoming space specifically for children with special needs. Clara, still unsure of her role, was gradually convinced that she was a crucial part of it. They found a perfect lot in Brooklyn, a central, accessible neighborhood. Construction began quickly. Richard invested his own resources, but also sought partnerships with companies and non-profits. The project gained visibility. The media became interested. The story of the successful businessman who gave up everything to create a therapy center, inspired by his own son's transformation, went viral. Gabriel became, in a way, the symbol of the project. He participated in interviews, always alongside Clara, telling his story with a surprising eloquence for a child. He spoke of overcoming challenges, of love, of how a simple person had changed his life. The center opened 9 months later. It was named the Clara Miller Institute, an explicit tribute to the woman who inspired it. All. Clara cried during the opening ceremony, seeing her name in large letters on the building's facade. She, who had always been invisible, was now being publicly honored. The facility was impressive. Therapy rooms equipped with the latest technology, colorful and welcoming play areas, qualified professionals, and most importantly, a work philosophy that placed affection at the heart of everything. Clara was appointed Director of Therapeutic Methodology. She, who had never imagined holding a director-level position, now coordinated a team of 15 professionals. Her role was to ensure that the work maintained its essence, its human touch, its individualized approach. It was to ensure that no child was just a number. The first few months were challenging, meeting demand, structuring processes, training teams, but slowly, the center found its rhythm. The families who came left transformed. Children who arrived withdrawn left smiling. Parents who arrived hopeless left with renewed confidence. Gabriel continued his journey of overcoming. At 10, he was walking without crutches most of the time. He still had some limitations, but he had gained an independence that had seemed impossible years ago. More importantly, he had gained self-confidence. He no longer saw himself as a child with a disability. He saw himself as a child with challenges but fully capable. At the new school they found, an institution with an inclusive approach, Gabriel flourished. He made true friends. He participated in school plays. He won awards in writing competitions. He became a role model for other children, showing that physical limitations do not define what a person can achieve. Marina rediscovered her passion for architecture. She went back to work, but now on projects with a purpose. She specialized in designing therapeutic and inclusive spaces. Her work gained recognition. She was invited to give talks, to consult, but more important than professional recognition was personal recognition. She began to see herself again, to value herself, to take up space. Richard and Marina's marriage was also transformed. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were arguments, adjustments, difficult moments. Years of distance aren't fixed overnight, but there was commitment. There was a genuine desire to rebuild, and slowly they rediscovered the partnership, the complicity, the love that had been buried under responsibilities and absences. Clara became a well-known figure in the pediatric therapy community. She completed her degree with honors. She published articles on her methodology. She was invited to speak at universities. But she never lost her humility, her simplicity, the essence of what made her special. She continued to arrive early, to hug every child, to make each one feel unique. Her mother, Mrs. Davis, having recovered from surgery, moved to New York to be closer to her daughter. Richard offered her a comfortable apartment, but Clara preferred to rent a smaller place with her own money. She wanted to maintain her independence, the dignity of achieving things on her own merit. Richard respected her decision, but made sure Mrs. Davis had quality medical care. The years passed. The institute grew, opened new branches, and served hundreds of families. Stories of triumph multiplied. Children who arrived without hope left transformed. And in every story, there was a piece of Clara, a piece of Gabriel, a piece of that family that allowed itself to learn that love and family go beyond blood ties. Gabriel, now 13, was at the institute helping with a new group of children. He had become a volunteer, working especially with children who were just beginning the journey he had already traveled. His ability to inspire, to show that it was possible, was extraordinary. It was a Friday afternoon. Richard had left his consulting office early. He arrived at the institute, changed from his suit into casual clothes, and went to the activity area. He saw Gabriel helping a 6-year-old boy take his first steps without support. Clara was supervising but letting Gabriel lead. Marina arrived shortly after, coming from a meeting about a new therapeutic space project. The four of them gathered in the institute's garden, sitting on a bench under the shade of a crabapple tree that Marina had insisted on planting. Gabriel broke the silence. "Dad, Mom, Clara, there's something I wrote that I want to read to you." He took a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was pages and pages of handwritten text in the boy's neat script. He began to read. "This is the story of how my family found each other. Not the day I was born, not the day I was baptized, but the day my dad came home early and saw something that changed everything. He saw that I could be more. He saw that my mom was exhausted. He saw that Clara was an angel disguised as a housekeeper. And he decided to stay." Gabriel's voice wavered for a moment, but he continued. "I used to think my limitation was my leg, but it wasn't. My limitation was thinking I wasn't capable, that I didn't deserve attention, that I was alone. Clara taught me that I am strong. My mom taught me that I am loved. My dad taught me that it's never too late to change. And together, the three of them taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about presence. It's about love." Richard was crying openly. So was Marina. Clara wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Gabriel continued. "Today I help other kids discover what I discovered, that they are capable, that they are loved, that they are not alone. And it all started because a woman from rural Kentucky, with a heart bigger than the world, decided I deserved more. She decided to see me when no one else did. She decided to help me when no one else would. She decided to love me when I didn't even know I deserved to be loved." Gabriel folded the paper and looked at the three adults who formed his universe. "I wrote this for school, but I really wrote it for you, to thank you, for saving me, for saving yourselves, for building a real family, even when everything said it wasn't possible. The silence that followed was deep, but not empty. It was full of love, of gratitude, of a mutual understanding that this journey, with all its challenges and pains, had been worth every tear. Richard hugged his son, then hugged Marina, then hugged Clara. The four of them stood there in the garden Marina had created, under the tree that would bear fruit for future generations, just existing together. The afternoon was fading over New York. The city continued its frantic pace outside, but there in that small garden, time seemed to stand still. There was peace, there was love, there was the profound certainty that they were exactly where they were supposed to be. Clara looked at the Institute building, saw children playing through the windows, heard laughter echoing. She thought of how many lives were being transformed there. She thought of her mother, recovered and happy. She thought of her siblings, proud of her. She thought of Louis, the brother she had cared for, who now also worked at the Institute. She thought of how generous life had been, even when it seemed cruel. Marina looked at her husband and saw no longer the absent, cold man, but the partner she had rediscovered. Imperfect, still a work in progress, but present. She looked at her son and saw no longer the fragile child who worried her, but a strong, confident, capable teenager. She looked at Clara and saw not an employee, but the sister life had given her. Richard looked at these three people and understood that he had spent decades chasing what he believed was success. He built an empire, accumulated wealth, gained recognition. But only when he stopped, when he looked at what truly mattered, did he discover what it meant to be truly rich. Gabriel, the youngest, the boy who was supposed to be limited but became a symbol of overcoming, looked at his family and smiled. There was nothing left to say. Everything that needed to be said was in that hug, in that shared silence, in that mutual presence. The crabapple tree, still young, swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. Its leaves whispered stories of new beginnings, of second chances, of unlikely loves. And there, under its generous shade, four souls that fate had improbably united formed a perfect circle, not of aesthetic perfection, but of existential perfection. Each one had saved the other in some way. Richard saved Clara from invisibility. Clara saved Gabriel from limitation. Gabriel saved Richard from emptiness. Marina saved them all from the illusion that family was just an appearance, and together they saved each other from the loneliness that each had carried, even when surrounded by people. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside the Institute, children were finishing their activities for the day. Parents arrived to pick up their kids, some with tears in their eyes as they saw small but significant progress. Therapists organized materials, planned future sessions, and shared stories of victories. Richard stood up, extended his hand to Marina. She took it, intertwining her fingers with his. Gabriel took his mother's other hand. Clara closed the circle, holding Gabriel's and Richard's free hands. They stood like that for a few more minutes, just breathing together, existing together, being a family together. When they finally let go, each one knew exactly what had happened there. It wasn't just a Friday afternoon. It was the silent confirmation that they had found what everyone searches for, but few find. A place in the world to belong. People with whom to share not just the good days, but the bad ones too. A safe harbor in the chaos of life. They walked back inside the Institute together. There was work to be done, children to care for, lives to transform. But now they did it together, as it always should have been from the start. Gabriel stopped at the door, turned to the three adults who had shaped who he was. "You know what I learned from all this?" The three looked at him expectant. "I learned that love isn't about grand gestures. It's in the small moments, in the father who comes home early, in the mother who really listens, in the person who chooses to see beyond the surface. It's in the daily decision to be present, to care, to choose each other, over and over again." Richard knelt to his son's level, something he now did with natural ease. "When did you get so wise?" Gabriel smiled. "I had good teachers." They went inside together. Night was falling over New York, But inside the Clara Miller Institute, the lights stayed on, just as they would stay on in the hearts of every person who had been touched by that improbable story. A story that began with a distant man who came home early, who discovered he was losing what mattered most, and who had the courage to change, to stay, to start over. A story that proved it's never too late to see what was always there. That true love can't be bought, it must be built. That family isn't defined by last names, but by daily choices. And that sometimes the person who seems to be serving is the one who is actually teaching the greatest lesson of all. That true power lies in the ability to love without expecting anything in return, to give without measure, to see potential where others see only limitation. The story of the Miller family and Clara was just one among thousands, but it was theirs. It was real. It was true, and it was perfect in its imperfection. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Richard, Marina, Gabriel, and Clara has deeply touched your hearts. If you were moved by this journey of new beginnings, of love that transcends barriers, of a family built day by day, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment resonated with you the most. Every day, we bring you intense stories like this one, revealing the deepest side of the human soul, stories of overcoming, of unexpected bonds, and of transformations that make us believe it's never too late to change. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions.